Am I excited for today's episode? Because there is a question I hear again and again, and it's a question that is both spoken out loud and also I can just sense when it is like whispered quietly inside of people's hearts. And those are the questions that sound like, why does love feel so hard for me? And why do I doubt it when it is offered and being given? And why do I feel like I have to earn it or manage it or prove myself worthy of it? And yet, underneath all of those questions is a deeper one that most people never say directly or never even realize. Like for myself, I didn't realize this was a thing that I was living with until it became really clear. And that is the question of, why do I feel like I'm not deserving of love? And so today I want to slow this way down, right? I don't want to just analyze it from the mind alone, but rather to feel into it through the body, through our nervous system's memory, and also to bring in a Kabbalistic lens to help us understand this in a more mystical way. Because this belief, I am not deserving of love, is almost never a belief that you were born with. It was learned. So let's dive in. Becoming a co-creator with the creator is your birthright. Together, we'll journey into your deepest authenticity. Because the more you align with who you truly are, the more effortlessly you call in the life that you desire and deserve. And most importantly, the more you step into your soul's highest purpose. Welcome to the Manifestation Method podcast, your number one source for Kabbalistic manifestation. Here we combine the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah, modern psychology, and quantum physics to help you achieve real, tangible manifestation results with my proven Abra method. I'm Chelek Eloah, and I'm here to guide you on your journey of manifesting a life that is aligned, expansive, and deeply connected to your highest self through the sacred energetic mechanics of Kabbalistic manifestation. To learn how to use Kabbalistic manifestation to transform your life from the inside out, go to chelekpolonsky.com or download the Manifestation Method app. Let's open the gates of manifestation together. All right, let's slow this down and really let it land, because this piece that I'm about to share, I think, matters more than almost anything else we talk about, right? And that is the fact that not one of us, meaning nobody for the most part, comes into this world questioning whether they are worthy of love. And when I say for the most part, I really think nobody does, but I'm trying to protect myself and say for the most part, unless there's a glitch in my understanding. But I don't think any baby comes into this world wondering if they are too much, if they're not enough, if they're hard to love or or if they're undeserving of care, right? Infants cry freely. And they reach for their caretakers without hesitation. And they expect to be held. They expect to be responded to. There is no self-doubt there. There is no self-judgment. There is only instinct and trust. And so from the very beginning, the body knows I am allowed to exist and someone will come. And from a Kabbalistic perspective, this is not accidental. Jewish wisdom teaches that the soul enters the world already whole, already worthy, already connected to source. And so in the language of Kabbalah, the soul is a Chelek Eloah mimal, a literal spark of the divine. There is no original flaw in the soul, no stain, no brokenness that needs to be fixed. Right? And the Zohar also teaches that the soul descends into the body already complete, pure, and radiant. And whatever fragmentation we experience in our lives happens after arrival, through our encounters with people and in the world. So when someone grows up believing that they are unlovable or, too sensitive or needy or unworthy of devotion, That belief did not originate in truth. It did not come from the soul. It came from adaptation. It came from moments, and there are often moments that are subtle and repeated, but moments when love felt conditional, when attention was inconsistent, when a child learned that certain feelings were welcomed and others were not, or when expressing need led to overwhelm, rejection, withdrawal, or shame, slowly, the nervous system learns to draw up conclusions, right? Conclusions that look like, if I'm quieter, I stay connected. Or if I don't need as much, then I'm easier to love. Or if I try harder, then I won't be left or abandoned, right? And this is where trauma really enters the conversation, and not just the kind that we usually think of as trauma, but as relational trauma that happens through bonding patterns, right? Nervous system trauma, attachment trauma, the kind that doesn't necessarily come from one big capital T traumatic event, but rather from repeated moments of misattunement. Moments where a child had to choose between authenticity and connection. And so every time the body chose connection, because to a child, connection equals survival, right? And Judaism understands this deeply. And in Kabbalah, suffering is not evidence of a flawed soul. It's simply evidence of a soul navigating a world that hasn't yet learned how to fully receive us as an individual. Right? The work is never about becoming worthy. You were born worthy. The work is about remembering what was always true, and then gently unwinding the layers of protection that formed around the heart in order to survive. Right? You were not born doubting your worth. You learned how to doubt it. And what is learned can be unlearned. And that's the good news. Right? It can be unlearned, not through force, but through safety, presence, and honoring your truth. And so that remembering is really the beginning of our healing journey, right? Because ultimately, trauma isn't just abuse or neglect. Trauma is what happens when a nervous system has an experience that it cannot metabolize while staying connected. Right? So it is what happens when love feels inconsistent, or when attunement comes and then goes, right? It's what happens when affection is conditional, or when our big feelings are met with overwhelm or dismissal or shame or being shut down. And so here's the critical piece, right? A child will always choose connection over truth. If love is unavailable, the child does not conclude to themselves, my environment is unsafe. What they end up determining about themselves is that there must be something wrong with me. And this is not a cognitive process. It is somatic, right? The body learns that being fully myself risks abandonment. And so then we shapeshift and contort ourselves and suppress our needs and our deep desires in order to meet this mold of what we think the world expects from us. And then we lose touch with our authenticity, right? So let's make this very grounded. Okay. If love came with conditions, meaning if love came with be good, be easy, be impressive, don't be too sensitive, don't be too much, don't need too much, then what happens is the system learns that love must be earned. So therefore, I am only lovable if I earn the love. Right? And if your emotional expression and how you showed up in the world was met with discomfort by others, right? Or maybe you were told to make yourself small, or don't be so loud, or don't be so needy, don't cry, don't be dramatic, don't make a big deal, right? What happens is the system learns that love requires self-suppression. Before we continue, I'd like to share something that I've personally been using in my own practice, especially during monthly ceremonies and gatherings. I've been integrating the Rainbow Chakra full length mat from Healthy Line, and it's become a really supportive part of how I ground my nervous system and create intentional space. This mat combines far infrared heat, PEMF therapy, and chakra aligned gemstones, which makes it incredibly powerful for slowing down, regulating, and reconnecting with the body. Each time I get on the mat, it works every time. I feel a deep sense of warmth and a settling. I don't feel stimulated. I don't feel like I have to force anything. It's just my system remembering how to soften. So I use it during meditation, breath work, and like I said, I have all my participants use it during monthly ceremonies, and I've gotten such amazing feedback. Everybody just loves laying on this mat. It's really the kind of experience that stays with you even after you get up off the mat. So if you're curious about it and you want to learn more about how it works and how I use it in my own personal practice, you can click the link in my show notes or visit the link in my bio. Right. And let's say care was inconsistent, right? Sometimes it was warm, sometimes it was withdrawn, sometimes we got what we needed from our caretakers, and sometimes we were like grabbing for it and we're like, where is it? Right. Then the system then learns that love is unpredictable. And that unpredictability makes it unsafe for our nervous systems to relax into. And all of these experiences over time start to crystallize into an identity. Right? If I were more lovable, then love would stay. Right? If I were better or easier, calmer, stronger, then none of this would happen to me. And this is really how shame is born in our systems. Right? So many of us are walking around as adults carrying a quiet shame that we had adopted in childhood. Right? The shame of believing that needing love, if I need love, then somehow that makes me unlovable, right? We're taught to like be strong and independent. And yeah, while it's true, we should be strong and independent, right? It doesn't contradict the fact that there is a deep rooted need here for us, right? If we wanted too much, if we felt too deeply, if we longed for closeness, then there must be something wrong with us. And so when that old need gets activated in our adult relationships, when we start to feel anxious or needy or grabby, or if we start to fear losing the connection, we don't just feel the need, we actually end up judging ourselves for having the need for connection in the first place. And that's where we spiral into shame. And that shame is the very thing that keeps us stuck. It actually prevents us from doing the two things that would actually heal the moment, right? What does the shame do? Well, first off, it stops us from acknowledging that the need itself is deeply human and completely real. Like we've somehow lost the memo and thought that the need for connection, our deeply human need for connection, is wrong. Right. And so then we spiral into shame. And second, it blocks our ability to actually ask for what we need directly and cleanly. Right. So instead of saying, I don't feel seen right now, or I could really use some reassurance, or I'm feeling a little unsafe and could use some closeness, right? Whoa, that feels really scary to say. It feels really vulnerable. It, brings out the potential for being rejected. And I get it. And so we either shut down or we lash out. Right? We withdraw, we go cold, or maybe your defense mechanism is to attack, criticize, escalate a situation. Right? And it's not because you want conflict, but it's because you don't maybe know how to stay open while asking for connection. Right? I mean, it's making me remember how the other night I was in bed and my husband was downstairs working in his office, and I was feeling super tender and raw and a little dysregulated. And the old me would have either shut down or gone into two modes. I could have gone into one or two modes, right? Either I shut down and I withdraw, or I would get passive aggressive, or I would criticize and then escalate, or I'd pretend like nothing was wrong, right? And so instead, after years of doing this inner work in my own system, I sent my husband a text message, and I told him directly. I said, I didn't blame, I didn't criticize, I didn't make it about him. I simply said, I'm feeling really tender right now, and I could really use some containment. I could really use a hug. And I knew he was in the middle of work, so I knew that it was like I knew I was interrupting something. And without hesitation, right? The male go-to mode of operating is, let me come to her rescue, because I didn't attack him. I didn't make it about him. And within 30 seconds, he was upstairs and he was holding me, and I felt contained, and simply a result of me just lovingly asking for what I needed. Right? And then it becomes a win-win. I got what I wanted and needed, and he got what he wanted and needed. He got to hold me in my tenderness, right? Which awakens something really deep and emotional and sacred in the man, right? And so really the bottom line here is that the truth really is, from the moment we're born, we need safety to survive. And that need doesn't disappear just because we grow up. Right? As adults, we still need emotional safety and attunement, reassurance, care. It doesn't matter how much inner work you've done. We still want that feeling of being contained and held and in this relational space with another. Right? The problem is, though, that we were never taught how to name that need without feeling ashamed of it. Right? The old me would have felt so ashamed that I was being quote unquote needy. Now I don't call it needy anymore. I call it, I'm in touch with my human needs. Those are two very different narratives, right? From neediness to just acknowledging my humanity, right? And so when we're ashamed of it, though, what happens in relationships is like really painfully predictable, right? What happens is a woman doesn't feel seen. She doesn't feel received. She doesn't feel validated in her experience. Her nervous system starts to register danger, right? Not logical danger, but relational danger. And then instead of reaching for connection, she pulls back. She closes her heart. She disconnects. She protects herself. And from her perspective, she's just trying to stay safe. But what happens over time and what starts to chip away at the spirit of the actual relationship is she starts to harbor resentment towards her partner because he doesn't just know what to do. Meanwhile, the man is left standing there super confused. He senses her withdrawal, but doesn't know what caused it or how to fix it. And the truth is, most men were never taught to track emotional cues in their own body, let alone anyone else's. And so from a young age, many boys are taught to disconnect from their feelings, to toughen up, to push through. Whereas women, on the other hand, many of us are primed for relationships from the day we're born. I know from the day I was born, my mom was already future tripping into having grandkids. I wish I could say I was kidding. So many of us women were taught from a young age how to read the room, how to scan, how to be, a little bit hyper vigilant, how to sense emotional shifts in other people, right? How to take responsibility for connection. And then as adults, men are expected to just know how to create safety and coherence and attunement without ever having been given the tools. And so what happens is both partners are hurting, deeply hurting. Both people are doing the best with what they were taught. And without a shared language for how to communicate needs and fear and vulnerability, the relationship slowly begins to erode. And this is why reclaiming your relationship, right, whether with a partner or with yourself, really requires learning how to communicate in an entirely new way, in a way that doesn't just come from shame or blame, but in a way that is rooted in self-trust and self-worth. And it really starts with this foundational truth, and that is that you are 100% worthy and deserving of the love you desire. Right? Not once you heal more, not once you need less, right? Not once you become easier but exactly as you are already worthy. And when that truth lands in your body, like on the level of nervous system, like, oh yeah, I know that I know that I know I am worthy of love because I am the embodiment of love, your entire interrelational experience begins to reorganize itself around you. Right? So shame here is often really misunderstood. Shame is not that I did something bad. Right? Shame, well, I guess as a child, what we're interpreting, the narrative we've adopted is I am bad. Right? And paradoxically, shame is protective at the same time, because if the story is I am unworthy, then the world still makes sense. It somehow justifies my experience. There's logic, there's causality, there's control. Right? But if the truth were I deserved love and I didn't receive it, then that would be devastating to a child's system, right? So what happens is shame steps in and says, I'll carry the blame so that you don't have to feel the grief around what it is you're not receiving, which is ultimately the love that you truly deserve, right? The love you truly deserve is a thing you're not receiving. And so you blame yourself for not receiving it, right? So that you don't have to carry the grief of not having it. This is why so many adults I see really walk around with kind of this like vague sense of unworthiness that they can't really quite trace or understand what's happening in their system because it's so old and it's so embodied and it's so loyal, right? Shame is loyal. It is loyal. So really, like from a nervous system perspective, what love requires is safety. Not necessarily chemistry with another person or attraction or intensity. This real, when I know I'm deserving of love, then what I call into my field is a love that feels so safe. And then I settle for nothing less than that. Right? If your early experiences were wired with a type of love that looked like anxiety or vigilance or efforting, then your body may equate this calm, safe love with like boredom. And maybe it equates intensity with connection. And there is a real rewiring there that needs to take place to come to back into your center, back into your truth. Right? Because at the end of the day, this intensity that is equated with love is why so many people feel more alive in relationships that are destabilizing. I mean, that was me for so many years. And it's not because I enjoyed suffering, but it's because my nervous system recognizes the frequency of it. So it felt familiar. The chaos was like, oh, I'm used to this. This is familiar, and I will choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. Right? We all do. But real intimacy, regulated intimacy, yeah, for a chaotic nervous system, it can feel unfamiliar, even threatening at first, because it doesn't activate the same survival patterns. And this is where the real initiation takes place. The real shift, paradigm shift from I need intensity in order to know that I'm loved to wow, there can be love in this real, deep, regulated, tranquil space. In Kabbalah, there's also a concept called klipot. And klipot are often translated as shells or husks, right? Kind of like an outer layer, how like an orange has an orange peel. It's like the peel, and our souls have klipot. And, this translation is missing something important because I think so many times we see klipot as bad or negative. But the truth is they are not bad, and they are not sinful, and they are not mistakes. They are protective layers that form around divine light when the light is too intense to be held directly. And so really think about that for a moment, right? Light in its essence is not dangerous because it's wrong. It's dangerous because it's powerful. And when there isn't enough containment, enough safety, enough structure to receive it, then something has to step in to protect it. And so what happens is this light that we all have, that we all are, gets wrapped, it gets covered, it gets shielded. Trauma or patterning really works in the same way, right? When love was inconsistent, or when presence came and then went, or when attunement felt overwhelming or unpredictable or conditional, or when your big feelings or your emotions or your sensitivity and tenderness, when it wasn't met with steadiness and with a calm, secure caretaker, then your psyche did something incredibly intelligent. It formed these klipot, these shells. And it's not because we were weak and not because you weren't smart. It's actually quite the opposite. It's because your system is so freaking intelligent and so freaking wise, because some part of you knew that your heart was too precious to leave you so exposed. And so these beliefs began to form, right? Not as truths, but as armor, as self-protection, right? Beliefs around I am not deserving, or I am too much, or I have to earn love, or I shouldn't need this thing, right? And these beliefs are not random thoughts. These are the klipot around your heart. They are the ways that your system learned to regulate closeness and disappointment and longing. It's a way that your nervous system learned how to stay in connection, because connection equals safety, and safety was survival. And so it was ways that we learned to survive love without being shattered by it, right? And so this is the part that I really want you to hear. Hi, Ayelet here. I just wanted to pop in and say I am so excited to officially introduce the Manifestation Method portal, membership, and app. This is your home for all things Kabbalistic manifestation. You'll get access to my monthly live workshops, soul deep hypno activations and attunements, all of our manifestation courses, and our global community of manifestors. And the best part? It's just $26 a month. That's less than a latte a week. Come manifest alongside me and start creating the life you desire and deserve. Head over to ayeletpolonsky.com to join us. Those beliefs are not your essence. They are not who you are. They are your coverings. They are your shield, right? The truth is your essence, your soul is the light beneath them, which is still intact, still whole, still worthy, and still, no matter how old you are, no matter how long you've been on your journey, no matter how long you've been partnered or single, you are still capable of love and of being loved, guaranteed. Right? And so the work is not to rip away those shells, because that would be violent and that would be re-traumatizing, and it would tell your system that it was wrong for protecting you, actually. And so the work is to soften them slowly, gently, with safety, with compassion, with truth that lands in the body, not just in the mind. Because when the nervous system finally feels safe enough, then the klipot don't need to stay so rigid, right? They loosen on their own. They start to thin and become permeable. And then what happens is the light, your light, begins to shine through again, naturally and without force. And so healing in this way is not about becoming someone new. It's about creating enough safety for who you already are to finally be revealed, right? And so here's an important reframe, right? Love is not something you deserve in the moral sense, and love is something you are designed to receive. It's by design. Your soul's orientation is towards connection, is towards union, is towards being met. So let us stop shaming ourselves for this thing that is just so incredibly human, right? When someone believes they are not deserving of love, what they're actually saying is, receiving love doesn't feel safe in my body. And that's a very different conversation, right? This is why telling someone to just love themselves, right? Just love yourself. Really, why? Just love, like, it's how many times we go and vent to our friends about someone we were dating or whatever. And they're just like, no, you are worthy. You're amazing. They don't deserve you. Just love yourself. And like, it just falls on deaf ears. You can't affirm your way out of a nervous system pattern, right? You can't think your way out of embodied memory, right? Healing happens when the body learns slowly that love doesn't disappear when you have needs, and connection doesn't require you to erase yourself, and being seen doesn't lead to abandonment, right? And this work, because it's so deep and so wedged into our nervous systems, it happens in safe relationships. It happens in therapy, in somatic work, in having a spiritual practice. It happens in moments of repair, right? And not all at once, but over time. I really, really I empathize with everyone who's listening and is relating to this, because I really feel it on such a deep level, for so many years. And I can say this because I've lived it. I equated my worthiness of love with what I was receiving from the outside world, right? So if someone chose me, or if they stayed with me, or if I was their favorite person or their best friend or their priority, or if they kept reminding me that they loved me, right? Then that must mean that I was lovable. And so, and when that validation though wavered, right, even slightly, then something inside of me would wobble also, right? My sense of worth would rise and fall and ebb and flow based on someone else's attention and availability and reassurance. And the truth is, so many of us are doing this without even realizing it. I didn't realize I was doing this until I realized I was doing this. And so what we're doing is we're outsourcing our lovability. We're asking other people to constantly confirm that we are enough, that we matter, that we are safe to love. Right? And obviously it makes sense when love felt inconsistent early on, and when it came with conditions or unpredictability, then we learned to look outward for proof that we were still chosen, that we still belonged to another person, to a community, right? But the real reclamation, and this has been a deep, deep, deep portal that I've moved through, over years, really over years. And recently in the last couple of years, this has really awakened in me and come online. And that is the deep, not just realization, but the embodied knowing that love was never meant to be sourced from outside of me, right? The people in my life are meant to meet my love, not to generate it. Right? They're meant to resonate with my love that I've self-generated. They're meant to reflect it. They're meant to amplify it, but not to be the source of it. Right? Because at the deepest level, you are not someone trying to earn love. You are love remembering itself. You are infinite love. Infinite love temporarily wearing a human body and learning what it feels like to forget and remember again. And when that truth lands, when you remember, not as an idea, but as a felt knowing, something profound and radical begins to shift. You stop grasping. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop needing proof every single moment that you are worthy and deserving. Right? Generating love from within doesn't mean you no longer desire closeness and intimacy or reassurance. I love all those things. I love closeness. I love intimacy. I love when my friends remind me of how much they love me. And when my husband tells me how lovable I am, I love those things. Right? But the difference is I've stopped needing it like I need oxygen. Right? I can breathe on my own. I can stand on my own. And from that place, love becomes something I choose, right? Not something that I cling to for dear life. And this is where I've seen my relationships really begin to transform. Because when you're no longer asking another person to make you feel worthy, you can actually see them and you can actually love them more freely without conditions, without attachments. And you can receive love without fear of losing yourself. And you can walk away from what does not honor you, right? Not because you've hardened, but because you're rooted in something so much deeper, right? That's what it means to remember who you truly are. That's the return. Not to being loved, but to being love, and when we don't yet know in our bones that we are the source of love, then this shows up as attachment wounds. And again, not because something's wrong with us, but because the nervous system learned very early that love had to be secured and monitored and maintained in very specific ways, right? And so for some people, this might look like anxiety in their relationships. They feel okay when they're connected, when the text messages are flowing, when there's reassurance in the air. But the moment there's distance or silence or ambiguity, then their body goes into alarm and they start replaying conversations and they start wondering what they did wrong. And they're needing to check in and they're needing to feel chosen again. And it's not that you're being needy at all. It's that your system learned that love could disappear. And so it stays hypervigilant and it scans for proof that the love is still there, right? And for other people, it might show up as overgiving, right? Being the one who listens more and gives more and adapts more. And, you become indispensable. You become the caretaker. You become the emotional anchor, right? And somewhere inside, there might be a quiet belief that sounds like, if I'm valuable enough and useful enough and loving enough, then I will not be left or abandoned, right? So then love becomes something that they earn through effort rather than something they allow themselves to receive. And then for other people, it shows up as withdrawal, as retreating or pulling, they pull back before they can be disappointed, right? They keep parts of themselves hidden and they don't ask for what they need. And they tell themselves that they're just independent or low maintenance or that they're fine on their own. But underneath that is often a real deep fear that if they fully need or want someone, they'll be let down. And so they choose distance as protection and they call it strength. Something deep, deep, deep inside is breaking down, right? And another thing, you also see this when someone stays in relationships that don't really meet them, but they hold on because the relationship itself feels like proof of worth, right? So it looks like if someone wants me, if someone stays, then I must be okay. Then I'm worthy, right? And leaving, even if the relationship itself doesn't feel right, ends up feeling terrifying, not just because of the loss, but because it threatens that fragile sense of lovability. This one touches me in a really deep place, right? All of these are different strategies around the same wound, right? The belief that love comes from outside of you and that it can be taken away. But when you start generating love from within and when you begin to feel yourself as the source, then these attachment patterns don't need to run the show anymore, right? The anxious part softens because it no longer needs constant confirmation. And the overgiver can rest because she learns or he learns that love doesn't need to be earned, right? Or the avoidant part relaxes because needing someone no longer feels like a threat to our survival. And again, this work does not happen overnight. It's taken me years, but over the years, I've seen as I've spiraled up the ladder in my own sacred alchemy journey, these pieces and where they meet me have softened and then softened a little more and softened a little more, right? And so it's a remembering that happens in layers. It happens in moments where you choose to stay with yourself instead of chasing reassurance, right? It happens in moments where you let yourself feel love internally before asking for it externally, right? It's in moments where you say, even if no one is choosing me right now, I am still whole. I am still a complete human being, a lovable human being, right? And from that place, relationships begin to change. You still desire connection because we're wired for it, but you no longer are asking it to define you. You no longer are attaching your worth to someone else's availability, right? You begin to choose partners from fullness instead of from fear. And wow, can I tell you what a liberating and freeing experience that is to embody. right? That's the healing of attachment wounds, not becoming less human, but becoming more rooted in who you truly are. And this is really why I created the manifestation method portal, right? It is a place where we meet. I have live monthly sessions where we workshop this stuff, and we do coaching calls and Q&As and a new moon activation. And there's all of the best of my best courses. And I have a whole 6-week course inside this membership, all about relationships and attachment wounds. And then there's a bunch of processes, including hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming and visualization and somatic work, all to help you deepen in everything I spoke about in today's episode, right? So if you feel called to join me inside the membership, and there's a community section there too, where I get to know you personally and meet you and get all your questions answered. It's where we get to take this work into a little bit more of an intimate container. So if it feels aligned, if you feel called, then the link to join me there is in the show notes of this episode. And really, here is the truth I want to leave you with. If you believe you are not deserving of love, it does not mean you're broken. It means that you've adapted brilliantly to an environment that asked you to survive, right? That belief that once protected you, it made a lot of sense. There are no wrong parts. There are no bad parts. It kept you connected. It kept you connected when the connection felt fragile. And so now, if you're listening to this, it might be ready to soften, right? Not because you've earned love, not because you've healed enough, but because love was never something you had to qualify for in the first place. It was something you were always worthy and deserving to receive. And so as I come to a close of this episode, first off, I just want to say thank you for being here. I know this is it could be a really delicate conversation for many of us, tender one. So thank you for listening with an open heart and for letting yourself feel and for being willing to question some of the stories that you may have carried about love and worthiness and yourself. And if this episode touched something in you, if it helped you feel less alone and gave language to something you've been maybe carrying quietly, or reminded you maybe of a truth that you already knew deep down, then I'd love to ask you for one small act of reciprocity. And that is to take a moment to rate or review this podcast, because that's what helps this work really reach the heart of people who are also still searching for safety and clarity and a way back to themselves. That's how these conversations find the people who need them most. And so, and if you know someone who might benefit from this episode, or someone who's been questioning their worth in their relationships, then I invite you to share this episode directly with them. Sometimes a single conversation arriving at exactly the right moment can change everything. And so thank you again for walking this path with me. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your courage. And thank you for your willingness to remember who you truly are. Here's to your rising. If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going inside the Manifestation Method Portal app, your #1 destination for Kabbalistic manifestation. Inside, you'll unlock the secrets of manifestation through my proven Abra method, rooted in Kabbalah, psychology, and quantum physics, designed to help you manifest real, tangible results from the inside out. Join our global community of manifestors, explore our signature courses, monthly live manifestation workshops with me, Ayelet, and access our transformational hypno activations and attunements to rewire limiting beliefs and align with your soul's purpose. The app is available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play. To sign up, head over to ayeletpolonsky.com. Becoming a co-creator with the Creator is your birthright. Let's manifest the life you desire and deserve together.